Welcome to Pods with Posh and Paul, a podcast designed to inspire and challenge listeners through story, experience and insight. To face adversity, learn from suffering and discover how to embrace life with a heart filled with love and gratitude. We are so thrilled to have you journey with us and can't wait to share your stories. Join Sue O'Callaghan and Joanne Webb as we disrupt the theory that everyone has perfect lives.
Today's guest is a keynote speaker and entrepreneur who has shared his story on national television. 7 years ago, aged just 29, Khoa was involved in a motor vehicle accident which drastically changed his life. He lost both of his legs and realised that life is precious and can be taken away from us in an instant. Khoa knows what it takes to beat the odds, and since his life-changing event, he has built a strong foundation to shape who he is today. That foundation includes exercising, which he believes is one of the key factors into living a fulfilled life. The aura of positivity, he shows people the brighter side of life in a sometimes dark world. When Khoa isn't positively impacting lives around him, he spends his time racing his car on the track, seeking that need for speed, where focus and clarity is paramount to moving forward. Here to share his story, please welcome Khoa Tran. Hi Khoa, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me, guys.
Hey, thank you for your time and thank you for coming on. Right, we're just going to dive straight into everything. 7 years ago, you had a road traffic accident, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what was the outcome of this accident?
Well, the outcome was having robotic legs now. I've lost two of my lower limbs and now I'm walking in stilts, basically.
That would be probably quite shocking for our listeners to hear. And it's a really huge adversity to overcome. So can you just tell us how that went for you? Obviously, you were able-bodied, full, had all your limbs when you had the accident, and then you've come away as a double amputee. So how did you get through that?
A little backstory. So I was just like a young kid having fun or whatnot, partying, drinking, like no care in the world. So I felt invincible, like every young person, until that tragic night where I drank a bit too much and I woke up in hospital, only to find out that I jumped into a car unwittingly, and then apparently my friend was drunk or sleeping. I'm not too sure on the details, but all I know is we hit a pole and I woke up in hospital without my limbs. So that was a big shock. My downtime is surprisingly short when you hear these type of stories, because when you hear someone, I guess it's a generalization where if you lose your limbs, the whole world's gonna be hating on you, or you're hating on yourself. Why did you do this and all that? But I didn't choose that mentality. I guess I was always a happy guy, a positive outlooking guy, and that's good because I didn't lose it. I only lost my limbs, but not my personality.
Wow.
I brought that forward to where I am today, speaking to you.
What an incredible lesson for our listeners, because I have to say, hearing your story and reading a little bit about you and looking at your Facebook page, that would be anyone's worst ever nightmare, to go out one evening and then to come back and realise that you've woken up with no legs. I mean, that's the worst thing that one could think of. So tell us a little bit more about that story then. You obviously are clearly a very positive person. You can see that in your nature. And as you say, you didn't lose that. What was the biggest shock then to you on that recovery program to where you were then to where you are now today?
I guess the biggest shock was not accepting it straight away while in ICU, because I was hallucinating in a sense. I was given a lot of prescription drugs to ease all my pain. That in turn altered my mind in a sense that my supposed reality wasn't actual reality. So I thought I was overseas in a hospital. I thought I was still in high school. There was many things that popped into my head that wasn't real. It was only until a couple of days later, while in ICU, when I wanted to use the bathroom. Still in my head, I thought I could walk. I could go home or whatnot and come back to hospital. That's why I told the doctors. I said, look, I went home. I called a taxi and I came back a couple of hours later. I said, doctor, can I go home? And he goes, no, you can't. You can't go home. You can't walk. I go, oh, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. All right. So a couple of days later, I go, you know what? I'm going to use the toilets. Bear in mind, I had a catheter tube inside and all that. But in my mind, I'll walk. I'm going to walk to the toilets and go to the bathroom and come back onto the bed. As soon as I stepped off the bed, and the bed was raised in a sense, because, in the hospitals where they raise it for the nurses to take care of their patients easier.
Yeah.
So in this case, my bed was raised with the rails down. And I shuffled to the side and I go, I'm going to go to the toilet. I stepped off and I slammed onto the ground. That was the moment. That was the pivotal moment where I realized, holy moly, I really can't walk. That snapped me back into reality. So all my thoughts while in ICU, going home, or whatever I was thinking, I knew that was an illusion in my head.
That must have been one, very, very painful to fall on the floor, and what a way to have it slammed in your face as an acceptance in a way. It's kind of metaphorical and poignant, I suppose, but it must have been really, really confronting then, because obviously the drugs had masked a lot of stuff leading up to that point, and then all of a sudden you are very much in reality. So how did you cope with that on that day?
I looked back and I kind of went into self-pity mode. So I would just say a lot of doubt, a lot of more thoughts went into my head of stuff that I can't do now. Saying like, oh, I can't run, I can't go to the shops anymore. I won't be able to do mundane tasks, which everyone takes for granted. So all those little minuscule thoughts started to build up. But in saying that, I knew that if I still kept that mentality throughout my recovery, then I'm not gonna move forward in a sense.
And I think that's a really good message for our listeners, because at the end of the day, and this is what we try to really emphasize to our listeners, we are all human and we all have these thoughts, and it doesn't matter what kind of suffering or adversity we go through. There is usually a stage where there's some part of pity that comes into that, because without that, how can we accept? So we have to deal with all of those, as you say, they're minuscule thoughts, but actually they're really big things. Your life changed incomprehensibly overnight. So of course all of them things are going to come into your head, but you're right, if you stay within that, there's no moving forward, is there?
That's
and the other thing, Joe, we talk about is acceptance, isn't it? Before we go into the grief phase, we accept where we're at. We actually take the situation we're in, and whether it's, whether we've got listeners today that split up from a relationship, lost a job, whatever adversity crisis they're going through, or had a major accident like you did. Our first stage is always saying, accept the situation you're in. But then the reality comes in that we go through the grief period, and all those losses are part of grief. You need to also go through grief. That's a natural part of our development to heal and move on, is to experience anger and rage and confusion, all those emotions. So that sounds to me like that stage that you're at then of realization, acceptance, also then moves into grief, all the things you can't do. If you've lost a relationship, you were planning on maybe having a future with that person, therefore you won't have children with them, you won't move to the house you're going to move with them. And it's all those losses, the things you can't anymore, and then it's a process of moving on afterwards, isn't it? But you're such a positive person, so there must have been moments of real highs and real lows as you were positive and you're probably focused to move on, but then reality was striking with the grief that was there as well, I imagine.
Yeah, so there were highs and really lows, but I chose not to focus on the lows, on the negatives. I chose to focus on the highs, which equates to all the positive, all the good things in life, what I can do, not what I can't do. what endless possibilities are possible for me to do in my situation. I'm here for a reason. I lost it. It's part of my destiny, in the sense that I'm here talking to you guys with robotic legs, and I chose to accept what I've been given and make the most out of it, because you're only limited by your own beliefs, and if you can't break past that barrier, then the world's only moving forward.
Can I ask a quick question? How old were you when the accident actually happened?
29 years old.
I mean, we're all still maturing at that age as well. People think you're a grown-up, people think you're a pure adult by then, but we are still actually in the process of growing up by then. So it's one hell of a thing to make you grow up and see the world in a different way.
Yeah, it's a different sense of growing up in my case. It changes my perspective, or it opens it up more. Whereas I had what you would say, like a tunnel vision of, what, I'm gonna just party, wake up, get drunk, repeat. But now I've detoured, where I'm seeing a different side, more appreciation of life in general, because life is so precious. We're only here for a short time. We've got to make the most out of it, whether it's being healthy, being kind to your friends or whatnot. You just got to spread that positivity. There's too much negativity that's surrounding us right now, especially with what's going on.
And I guess to have that sense that life is so precious, it makes you focus on the positive things. If you think that life is limited and it is short and it can end tomorrow, and the only thing that's guaranteed in all of us is that we're all going to die at some stage. So what do we do between now and that time when our time is up? And I love your attitude. I think you're such an inspiration in the way that you speak. Do you think that positivity is something that comes naturally to some people? Do you think it's genetic from the experience you've had, or do you think it's something that you have to really work at very hard to find?
I think it's a mixture of the environment you're surrounded with, but at the end, it's your choice to choose what you focus on. So yes, we all can be positive, but at the end of the day, every single human being, we're all wired differently. We're all uniquely wired. For example, if there's no negative, then what's a positive? If there's no hate, then what is love? There always has to be some type of balance. Not in a sense balance, but there's always a polar opposite of each.
You don't know the one without the other, do you? How can we know the highs if we haven't dealt with the lows? How can we know happiness if we haven't had sadness? And this is that's what I love about Brené Brown, about when she talks about living in vulnerability, because some people choose to kind of hide away from all of that. So their life is kind of a little bit more static. They try to protect themselves. They put up all of these barriers. They're not living in vulnerability. But when you don't live in vulnerability, how can you have those massive highs and the massive lows? And they're so worth it, aren't they? As you said, life is so precious. We're here for a short time. We might as well make every day count. And Sue is right. You are an inspiration. And there's people out there with a heck of a lot less problems. But again, we don't compare. We don't compare, because your problems might be less than others. Doesn't mean they're not worthy. However, there are tools that we can help to get us through situations. And you chose to focus on the positives and not all the negatives. And there were negatives. You could have focused on them, but you made a choice, which is really empowering, isn't it?
Yes. So there are negatives, and I do focus on the negatives, but not in a prolonged period.
Yeah.
Whereas I'll reflect. Okay, so this has just happened. All right, let's move on. So now I'm looking to the opposite of the negatives, obviously, is the positives, and focus more energy, using my energy onto that side of the fence, the good side.
And not only are you such an inspirational person, Khoa, but you are living such an inspiring life. Can we fast forward 7 years from that accident and have you explain what you're doing now, where you're at now in your life?
I'm a business owner. I actually own a gym, and I'm a fitness junkie. I love going to the gym. Unfortunately, here right now we're in like stage 3 lockdown, so my gym is closed, but I'm still training at home. I'm also a keynote speaker, so what I want to do is I want to just spread my inspiration of hope and positivity, especially in times of uncertainty. Like no one expected what's happening around the world right now. And there's a lot of how just headless chooks running around. We don't know what to do. If you can control that and think, you know what, I'm glad to be in this situation, because 20 years down the track, I could tell my grandchildren that I was a part of this event that happened, a once in 3 lifetime event.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to overcome the situations that I went through. Yeah, that's a positive side of what's happening right now.
So you're a gym owner, you keep fit. For all of those able-bodied people out there who don't know where to start with fitness, there is always a way to be fit, isn't there? And were you fit prior to your accident?
I was fit, but I had that mentality where I would train, but I wasn't training. It was more like, all right, I'm drinking a lot, but to counteract that, I'll train.
Yeah.
Just to keep it in a 50-50 balance. Because if I drink all the time, then I'll be a slug, you know. I seriously think I won't be here if I didn't train back then, to like doing outdoor sports, going to the gym, any of that.
I think that's a really interesting point you've just made, because my sister faced cancer last year, and it was a really nasty cancer diagnosis. And she's the same. She says she doesn't think she would have got through that had it not been for her fitness. Fitness of the body should never be underestimated, should it?
No. And it's not only your body, it's your mental state too.
Yeah.
If you want to release your stress, what I tell people, just go to the gym, work on yourself, concentrate on yourself. Because when you're pumping iron or going for a run, you're taking care of yourself, and it gives you a chance to self-reflect on what's valuable.
What better time to do it than now? I've been on your Facebook page. I've seen the exercises that you're doing. I have to say, I love the one with the cat beside, because I'm watching the cat who's got the sleep signs coming out. So we're kind of watching you and watching the cat. It makes for very good entertainment. But it's also, you know, for me sitting at home, I think, gosh, I could actually get I haven't got any dumbbells, but I could get something that would weigh about the same amount and do the arm exercise that you're doing. It's very inspiring. So for people listening to the podcast, go on to his website and go and have a look at his exercises. But I love also your 3 keys, which is acceptance, forgiveness, and be fit. So we've looked at acceptance, we've looked at being fit. Can you talk about a little bit more about forgiveness? I'm fascinated because Joe and I have just literally done a recording on forgiveness. And I said at the beginning, it's a big challenge. Forgiveness is a big one for me. So where do you fit in that whole role of forgiveness? Forgiveness,
it's more of a sense of forgiving easily, because that takes off it removes a chip off your shoulder if you don't forgive. If you are always holding on to a grudge of someone who has caused you harm or whatnot, then they'll always be on your shoulders. You know, you're putting unnecessary weight. It's hard for some people to forgive in certain situations, but you can choose to forgive, and that enables yourself to move forward. Because if you didn't forgive, it's gonna linger around you throughout your life.
You're right. If you are not forgiving of other people, even of yourself, it's just there, isn't it? It's there as an extra weight, and it's a weight we don't need. Life is pretty tough at times, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, quite often it's pretty tough. It throws this stuff at us often, and if you're carrying that extra stuff, that it's just unnecessary. And you're right. Again, it's exactly the same thing what you said about acceptance at the beginning. You chose to make a decision to not really ponder on all the negatives and the lows. You chose where to put your energy, and forgiveness is exactly the same, isn't it? It's a choice.
Yep. At the end of the day, you control you, so it's your choice. The choices you make can shape the outlook of your future. If you chose to hold on to grudges, hold on to the unforgiveness, then you're going to carry that around with you for a certain time. For how long, you don't know. But what you do know, if you choose to forgive easily and let go easily, then your shoulders just become lighter. in a sense.
Yeah.
Again, so inspiring. I mean, you can just tell by looking at you, you've got such a delightful smile, you've got such a joy all over your face. You can actually tell, can't you, Joe, those people that forgive don't hang on to that. And I always think, you say it's a weight on your shoulder, I always think of it as sort of a ball and chain around your ankle, dragging you along. You know, you're trying to walk down the road, you're trying to carry on with your journey, but this thing in the past is always holding you back. You're never completely free. And yet looking at you can just see you're completely free. And freedom is another word that I love. Joe and I were talking about freedom this morning with forgiveness, is that, you know, you can walk your path, you can walk your journey, you can walk in a sense of excitement, can't you, about what the future might hold, even if you don't know what's in the future, if you're in that freedom.
Yeah, well, what you do know is the present. And if you feel free by doing those steps, by accepting quickly, forgiving easily, and to be fit physically and mentally, then that present is what counts. And then it can shape what tomorrow brings, you know. And if you keep that positive mindset, also, you got to laugh. Everyone laughs.
Yeah, we love laughing.
Yeah. Humor is the best medicine.
Oh, totally, I agree. And like, you don't let anything hold you back, do you, Khoa? You know, we watch your Facebook posts and they are all inspirational. You always got that big grin on your face. It's infectious, and you write laughter, fun, make it lighthearted. But you know, you love photography. You still race cars around a track. You know, anything is possible, like you say, isn't it?
Yeah, with racing cars, like it. If you think about it, I was involved in a high-speed accident. The last thing you'd think of me being in a car is speeding, and especially driving it. But I guess that was accepting it too, and it was a way to face it. In a sense, I had to make sure that it didn't affect me in a way. But when I jumped into the car, I was like, oh yeah, I still love cars. Awesome. So it hasn't changed really, because I loved cars before. And I used to go to the racetrack too, but so I didn't lose any of that.
Just one word that springs to mind through the whole story is courage. You have such courage. So, you know, there's a phrase, isn't there? Face your fears. But how many people can actually face those fears, live with positivity, live to a life that inspires so many people? There's such courage in there. And it's, you know, that again is so inspiring. We interviewed an incredible chap last week, didn't we, Joe? Mark Mondino, and he had a surf accident and is now a quadriplegic. And his journey, like yours, is just so inspiring in terms of positivity, the learning, the courage that's in it. And I think the message to the listeners is actually there's all types of suffering, adversity and conflict and suffering and pain. And it doesn't matter what it is, but the lessons are still the same. The courage is what's inspiring, the courage to keep going, the positivity, the gratitude, the fact that the appreciation life is short. And I think within all of that, you tick every box.
At the end of the day, we have to look at the brighter side of being here. I choose not to look at the media as much, in a sense, not to focus on it. Like it's there, but you know, I'll look at it. And I'll go, okay, so this is what's happening in the world. All right, oh yeah, that's all right. But you know what? Let's focus on something else. And there's a lot of, especially when we're in the world of social media, there's a lot of stuff that we could still search. That if you felt down, you don't need to go into the news. You could search for how would you say, like, uplifting messages, motivational messages, or whatnot, just to bring up your morale in that moment, you know, if you do feel down.
Yeah, it's a great tip, because you're right, because you go where your focus is, don't you? And it's as simple as that. So if you're going to focus on negativity, that's where you're going to head. You're going to head down the negativity road.
If you're surrounded by, yeah, exactly. If you're surrounded by negativity, you're going to absorb that negativity. Positive social posts helps a lot too, because we're on the internet now. We're all interconnected, the whole world. It's that easy to find good stuff.
And I think that is such a lovely note to leave our listeners with. It's your choice as to what you choose to see. That's so powerful, isn't it, Joe?
I love it.
Hey, listen, it's been so incredible to have you on board. We feel honoured and privileged to have you come and join us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Khoa is just amazing, and if you are inspired by him, then please go and check him out on Facebook, Instagram or TikTok, and you can find him by just typing in his name, Khoa Nam Tran, and Khoa is spelled Khoa. Thank you, bye. Thanks so much for being with us today. For us to inspire others to live their magnificently imperfect life, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or on your podcast app. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Pods with Posh and Pool. We can't wait for you to join us on our next episode. Love, light and peace.